Um, let me, before we get this started, for anybody, let me get it set up on YouTube, and then we'll get started. I see it, and they can edit it out in the final one. Let me edit this, and then we're gonna get
Hi, everybody.
to Ashley while we're.
It's all very technical, but this gives viewers a chance to jump in before we start with the content. So it's actually kind of nice
Yeah, I agree.
having a little setup like this, having the tech actually happening while the live is starting. I wish it was a subject that was light or fair, but today's subject is pretty sad, not gonna lie.
It is. I agree with you. Okay, I've got that saved. I can put in the work later. So save. I can put in the title work and stuff later.
Sure.
Everybody who's coming in. Okay, cool. So here's something that they don't know yet, and before we get started, I'll say this. Most of them don't know I'm working on a new podcast. So this is we're just putting it right in the front end. Thank you, Ashley.
You're welcome.
So everybody who's coming in, real quick, this is basically a live podcast. I had Ashley agree to come on today, which I'm very grateful for. If you don't know who she is, then we're going to change that right now. But this was supposed to go a different way, but we've had some events happen today, and we felt that this would be an appropriate time to have this kind of a discussion. So that being said, let's get started. I'll give it a second to give them a place to cut. All right. Welcome to Unheard, true crime in their own words. This is a show where we strip away the headlines and let people speak for themselves, whether it's victims, families, or the people who've shaped how these stories are told. And today I am honored to have someone who has spent decades on the front lines of journalism, covering some of the most important and heartbreaking cases in America. You know her from years of being on cable news, Banfield on News Nation, which is at 10 p.m. Eastern. And of course, I know her from her new podcast, Drop Dead Serious, which you should definitely check out. Ashleigh Banfield. Ashley, thank you for being here.
Oh, Justin, thanks for asking. And again, I'll repeat it. It's sad that we're gathering for this very first inaugural podcast, this live stream on such a sad topic.
Yeah, I agree. And so, as I said before we started this was not something that Ashley and I had planned on talking about. And of course, we're referring to I mean, it's called what is the assassination of Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
Uh, Charlie is a very polarizing figure, and some people love him, some people don't. But regardless of your views, as Ashley said right before we started, playing judge, jury, and executioner is not the way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I just got back from CrimeCon with you, Justin, and one of the panels that I gave, the panel discussions, about 1,000 people in the audience, was about the Luigi Mangione alleged assassination of Brian Thompson on the streets of New York City, the CEO of United Healthcare. And I am very firm when I say there are two things I can state unequivocally. Um, Puppies are cute and murder is bad. There is fact all through that. And I don't care what you say or what you think. I do not have the right to kill you for it. And I fear that what happened on the streets of Manhattan and the celebration afterwards and the followers and the money that went on Luigi's books and the rationalization for that execution because it was someone's job they didn't appreciate, they thought was responsible for deaths and injuries and denials of healthcare claims, that this was legitimized, this killing. Um, and now what are we seeing? Someone doesn't like Charlie Kirk's opinion either. And so they decided that they too could become judge, jury, and executioner at Utah Valley University. And this is where I'm saying we are on the wrong road if that's how people feel.
I agree, and then there's also to add to that, there were the 2 politicians in Minnesota not too long ago, again, because you don't like them, and this is not the way to handle things. And, Charlie Kirk, again, like I said at the beginning, no matter how you think about him, he was very young. He was passionate about what he did. He did not deserve to die for it.
He also has 2 little kids. Both are still in diapers.
I didn't know that.
And yeah, he's 30. I have to start saying was. I've been saying is all day, but he was 31 years old. He has, I believe, a 2-year-old and an almost 1-year-old, perhaps. And the older one is a daughter, and the younger one is a son. And this young family is going to have to now move on in some way without their father. And one of the things that breaks my heart is the video that I saw earlier today. And I do not recommend people watch the video of him being shot on stage. It is so traumatizing. Those kids are going to see it one day, just like the Kennedys, both both Kennedys families and children, John and Jack. They're all, or rather, I should say, Jack and Bobby. Their families all have seen their loved one shot dead. The brutality of it. They've grown up with that as the image of their father. And that's what these kids are going to end up growing up with, that this is how their father died in front of a crowd by a coward who stood 200 yards away and brought a long arm. This is the thing that just broke me down today. And I'm pretty tough, as a war correspondent, Justin, and I
Yeah.
see a lot of yucky things. But minute I saw that video, I burst into tears because I know it's a man and a father and a son and a brother and a sister and a cousin and someone that a lot of people love.
Like you said, you've been doing this kind of thing for a long time. You've been in war zones. You've covered a lot of, incredibly important stories. Let me ask you this: people assassinating others, that's a tale as old as time at this point. But do you feel, because I kind of feel like it has, and maybe it's just me being more in tune to this world, do you feel that this type of sentiment, this type of mentality, these types of horrific acts have increased in
Yeah,
recent years?
I do. We just saw President Trump. Someone took a shot at him before being taken out by Secret Service. And I think that people are starting to feel like it's okay. There's been a degradation of culture in America. People have just let a lot of things slide. And one of the things I think people might be letting slide is what they have the right to do. I know my rights, they say when an officer says license and registration. I don't have to give you. Yes, you do. You do have to give the officer your license and registration, and you do have to behave with an appropriate comportment. And we're losing a lot of that. And I think it might be bleeding itself into this kind of thing, that people think it's okay. There's a lot of supporters for what Luigi Mangione allegedly did. It's okay to have thing on behalf of others. I'm here to say, don't fucking avenge something for me. Don't you dare kill on my behalf. I emigrated to this country for a reason. I love this country. I am a pious and proud American, and it was work to get here and become one. And I did so for many reasons: opportunity, a nation of laws, and the kind of people that we were before this kind of thing started happening.
How do you think we get back to some semblance of order? That's a loaded question, I know.
Yeah, everybody needs to just shut the F up on their feeds. They have to just stop. They've got to stop being so angry, and they've got to stop letting that anger consume them. First of all, get off your damn feed. You shouldn't be scrolling for that many hours a day. People have to realize that life is real outside of your feed, and they're losing sight of that. They're losing sight of their humanity, their kindness, their sense of community. We are all in this together, right? I hate to say we're it's a global community. We are. You punch me, I bleed. Same in Vietnam, same in South Korea, same in Iraq, same in Iran, same in Alaska, same in South America. We are all exactly the same. And we're all just trying to get to the end, right? With our kids and our jobs and our
Absolutely.
families. And everybody has different opinions on how you get to the end, but none of that should include, I have agency over your life. None of it should, right?
Right.
And so, how do we get there? Everybody needs to take a step back from how angry their feeds are making them.
So I think that you bring up a really good point, and I'm going to give my opinion. If you disagree with me, please let's talk about it. If you do, and if you agree, let's still talk about it. But basically, in my opinion, because I do social media, right, content creation, and so I am on all of the platforms pretty much all the time, and I will say that rage bait is a real problem. And for
Yeah.
people who don't know what rage bait is, it's where things are posted specifically to elicit a reaction from you, and typically that reaction is anger. And so you see that, and the reason that those do so well and why people do that is because as content creators, if that page is monetized, and I'm thinking Facebook specifically right now, but if that page is monetized, then the more reactions, the more views, the more just interactions with that page, the more money that creator is going to make. And I will say on Facebook, that money can be pretty decent. And so
Yeah,
that's why they want to do it and they don't care the repercussions from it. And I kind of feel that you take that and then you take the fact that, we used to all have a conspiracy theory uncle, right? You'd see him once or twice a year at the holidays, be like, oh, that's
Uncle
just Uncle
Louie.
so and so. They're whatever. And you dealt with it. Now with social media, they have a place to congregate. They have a place to bounce their theories off. And I think because of that, you've really gotten into on both sides of the aisle political extremism, and that is shaping such anger. Because when we look at everything that's happened lately, including Luigi, the lawmakers in Minnesota, this one, these are all political. And you said Donald Trump too. These are all politically motivated, all of them.
Yeah.
Even some
And,
of the mass shootings are
you
like
know,
politically motivated.
I'm a victim of something that happened 24 years ago tomorrow, and that is 9/11. I was under the North Tower. I was hit with the debris, and but for breaking through a window and trying to find a breathing space, I might not have survived that.
I didn't know
But
that.
for running maybe, I don't know, 1 more minute south, I might have not survived that, and it didn't work, right? That terrorism didn't work. Those hijackers did not change American policy, did they?
Nope.
Terrorism doesn't work. Killing someone you don't agree with doesn't work. UHC hasn't changed things and no one else is changing anything either. It doesn't work. I don't know if that's the message that we need to get out to people, is that you taking out your political enemy isn't going to change things. It'll actually make their side stronger, because I guarantee you this will be used politically by so many people.
Oh,
And
100%.
so, good for you. What'd you do? You took two kids, daddy. Way to go. Celebrate that, really? And that's the problem. It doesn't work. And so if people could just understand that you grabbing that rage bait and jumping into the fray and maybe acting upon it, it's not going to work. It's just going to make the situation worse. What does work is what we do really well in America. We've always had civil discourse. We've always had civil society. We are a nation of laws, and that does make us the kind of place where freedom of speech has always flourished. I am so sad that that speech has been so bastardized and is now being used to create monsters among us.
I'll take it even a step further. Not only will it not work, what they were trying to do, not only will it become a political talking point, but they've made him a martyr.
Yeah,
I mean, at the end of the day, they made him a martyr. You're talking about a young, like you said, 31, 32. I think his birthday's in October. I looked it up. 31, 32-year-old guy. And he's, like you said, left kids behind. My daughter's 6, and I know you have children too. And they're my world. And I couldn't imagine her having to grow up without me. And I'm sure the same for you. And no matter what, like we said with Charlie Kirk, polarizing, controversial, no matter how you feel, what you know him as, they knew him as daddy.
that's right.
That was
That's
it.
right. So all that happened today in terms of whatever political correction this shooter was trying to affect, it didn't actually correct anything that you think is wrong. It just took someone's dad away and someone's husband away and someone's son away. That's all it did. Like, so good for you. I would love to see you face those daughters and that wife and Charlie's mom and dad. I would love to see you with your brave rifle facing them down and telling them your reasons for why you did that. Hatred aside, it doesn't work.
You know, if you want to fight somebody like that because you don't agree with their ideology, you can you can fight fire with fire. He's a radio host. He's got, his podcast. He's got all the stuff that does. You can rise, and this is the great thing about America and the great thing about social media. If you have talking points and people want to listen to you, you can rise to high levels on social media. I'm living proof of that. I
Yes.
didn't expect to become, this, a person with 2.4 million people across platforms following me. Didn't expect that at all, but I have it and I've chosen to use it in a way, um, to try to elevate people's stories and platforms and help. And when you look at somebody like Joe Rogan, this is another good example. A lot of people don't like Joe Rogan. And so Midas Touch came along and they have a podcast that's basically like Joe Rogan, but the opposite. That's how they chose to fight it. And that's how you're supposed to fight it.
There's another way, and it's really easy. Organize a carload of people to go to the polls. How about that?
There you go.
Just organize, because voting is how, for over 200 years, we have affected change in this country, and it actually works beautifully. And we have a peaceful transition of presidents who shake each other's hands, usually, and they change, residences in the White House. And that's how you can make a way bigger change.
Yeah.
Go and set up some kind of an organization where you get people to the polls. That really changes things. Shooting somebody doesn't.
Yeah, and for people who say that, your vote doesn't count, there's a lot of people, and let's take this opportunity to say this because that is one of the great things about America, the ability to vote. A lot of people, if they vote at all, only vote in one election, the presidential election every 4 years. But you have state and local elections that are actually, I would argue, more important to your daily life, and your votes do, especially in your local elections. Your votes really do make a difference.
Yeah, well, redistricting starts at the local level. So,
Yeah.
um, you know, how can you actually make a difference? You just sitting there by yourself listening to this podcast with us and watching us on YouTube. Okay, well, you have some time before your next local elections and the next federal elections. How about start a fundraiser for buses to get people to the polls? How about
Great
that?
idea.
What if you got, I mean, imagine this. What if you started a fundraiser and you got 1,000 people to the polls? That actually could tip the scales. That really, like some elections, that's more than enough to tip the scales. And you did it because you decided to organize. You decided to say voting in this country is more important than shooting people. Voting against someone you disagree with is more important than shooting them in the neck and taking them away from their children. That's how you can really affect change. It's actually not that hard.
No, it's not. And if you want people to have the policies, again, you need to vote for it. And I think that's a great idea. And I don't think that would even be that hard to organize or get funding for.
That's right. I mean, people will give anything on GoFundMe these days. It's incredible. What if you felt so outraged by what you just saw at this university campus? Your heart is willing to give at this point. You want to do something. You feel powerless. How many times have we said that? I feel so helpless. I just wish I could do something. People do. People give money. They happily give money when they think it's a cause that they agree with. So, yeah, there you go. I gave you your start. If you're angry, this might make you feel better. And then I also just really highly recommend, this might sound like, this might sound like kumbaya stuff, but do something nice every day. Like, figure out what it is. I don't know if it's just give your son a kiss in the head, or do something nice for some, put some money in someone's parking meter as you're walking by and you see it's about to go to zero and they're not there. They're total strangers. They'll have no idea who you are, but you put it out there. There's something about doing something nice every day that actually makes you different. I can't explain it, but I've lived it and I know it's true. It's like Bill
And if
Maher
I
says,
may,
I don't know it for a fact, but I know it's true. Doing something nice does change you.
and if I may, Ashley's Canadian, and we know how nice Canadians are. So
They
I think
are,
that it's
right?
really good advice. No, Canadians are so
I
nice.
just came back from 3 months in Canada. I move up there for 3 months every summer because it's where I'm from and it's where my family is, and so if I'm gonna get my
Right?
American children and my American husband to know my culture and be, more Canadianized, and my kids are dual citizen, it's really helpful to immerse ourselves back in, my hometown and my culture and my people, and boy, I can feel it when I get up there. They really are kind. They're a little, angry right now, though, with the stuff that's been going on between the White House, and some of the
There's
tariff business and some of the
Yeah,
51st state business. That has not settled
yeah.
well in Canadians, and they've shown some claws for the first time. I've seen some really serious claws
They're still
among my
nice
fellow
about it.
countrymen. It's mostly mostly some aren't, but yeah, generally speaking, the only way that makes Canadians mad is to challenge their Canadianness. That's about it.
I have this is completely off topic, but I have to say this for a second since you brought it up. I've never been to Canada, okay, and I really wanna go, and
Oh,
we really wanna go, and so, my wife and I are, like, thinking about possibly going up to Toronto or possibly Montreal, so maybe I need to ask you offline, like, "Hey, what's better? What's good for a six-year-old that she could
How
do.
about I just tell you right now,
Tell me.
all my hits. These are my greatest hits. Okay, Vancouver, long flight from the East Coast, worth it. It is such a beautiful city. It's like Seattle, but with the Canadian, and it's also super close to Whistler Blackcomb. So if you're skiers, wow, it doesn't get anywhere better in the world than Whistler Blackcomb. Plus the Sea to Sky Highway, which is the drive from Vancouver to Whistler, is probably the most beautiful highway I've ever been on. Go east now into the next province over, Alberta. Calgary. It's not the capital. Edmonton is up north, but Calgary is one of my favorite cities. I lived there for 5 years. It's like Dallas North, super cowboy. It's really cosmopolitan. Lake Louise and Banff and the Rockies are right there. So again, skiing is amazing, hiking is amazing, Calgary is cool, awesome. Then go to my hometown, which is Winnipeg. People will always say something, well, what's to see in Winnipeg? It's in the middle of the prairies, but it has the most unbelievable human rights museum you will ever see. It also has one of the most preeminent ballets in the world, the Royal Winnipeg Ballet. Whew, it does not get
Wow.
better, rivals the Bolshoi. Then you go into the Lake Country, which is just 3 hours east of that, and it is seriously God's country. It's where I spent 3 months. Then you head down to Toronto. Toronto's a big metropolitan. I say it's clean New York. It's like going to New York, but it's clean. You can eat off the streets. People are nice, lots to see there, lots to do there. Hockey Hall of Fame, awesome for kids. Montreal, it's like going to Paris. Again, nice people, but the accent is different than Paris, right? They talk like this, and it's a very different kind of French. And so, but it's very French and very European. Quebec City, even more European, beautiful old walled city. Then I can't tell you from there because I've never been east of there into the Maritimes, but I know they are stunning and beautiful and amazing for biking and visiting and camping. How's
Well,
that?
it's I think that's great. It sounds like, Tourism for Canada probably needs to hire you.
That was
Um,
just off the top of my head, the places I
yeah,
know, the places I've been.
I will say this real quick anecdote, and then we can keep going with our topic, but, um, years ago, I did a tour, when I was 19, I turned 20 on the trip. We did a 31-day European tour, and there were Canadians with us who were from, they're French Canadians, and when we were in Paris, they ordered food at a restaurant, and they spoke French to do it, and the waiter responded to them in English,
Yes, I've had that happen. Yes.
and
Um, they don't so listen, people in Quebec don't love the rest of Anglophone, Canada, generally speaking. That's a hell of a sweeping comment, but I've had that happen. I have spoken French and probably had some of my Anglophone accent or maybe even Parisian accent, and they answered in English. They don't love it. But
yeah.
they don't usually do that to Americans. They actually really like Americans. So I think if you try French and you say, we're from, such and such a state, and here I go,
Well, no,
they'll answer you in
these
French.
were French Canadians in Paris, and they ordered and the because the French
Oh,
yeah,
it's the
yeah,
opposite. Oh,
the
okay. All
French
right.
yeah, the French waiter did not like their accent, so they responded in English, and they responded back in French, "I speak French, that's how you will talk to me."
I
I was
would have
like,
liked to see
"Alright."
that bitch scrap, but it is different.
Yeah,
If you like, here's the difference. If I said in French, Parisian French, "Look outside, regardons dehors, regardons dehors." If I said it in, Quebec, it'd be "Gardons dehors,
yeah,
gardons dehors." It's like, British
like
versus Texan. Very, very different.
like a southern version of French or
Yeah, yeah.
English,
Oh, I
yeah.
forgot one. By the way, when you're in Calgary, just 2 hours, an hour 40 to the west of Calgary is Banff, and that is worth the trip alone. If you were gonna go to any place in Canada, just choose one place, Banff. Summer or winter, it is the most beautiful spot ever.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. Well, I'll let my wife know, and she can start looking. Um, so we talked about Charlie Kirk, and I don't know. I know that there were a couple things that you wanted to talk about today, and we can talk about this other one too if you want. Do you want to talk? I won't say his name. I only refer to him as inmate 163214. You are allowed to say his name, but I have made that choice. I have
Okay.
made that conscious choice. But you can say whatever you want, and I don't know
So
if you want to talk to him about him.
here's what I think about that. I agree that it is painful to hear Brian Koberger's name, but it's also painful for me to hear Jeffrey Dahmer's name, John Wayne Gacy's name, the Iceman's name. It's painful to hear those names. However, I feel that the reason we still talk about Bundy and Dahmer and Gacy and BTK, the reason we still talk about them, Justin, is because we, as the normal part of the flock, want to know every single thing we can so that we can red flag the ones before they get to us. I think that's our human nature. We just can't believe someone can walk among us, look like us, and be such a wolf in sheep's clothing that we can't recognize the danger. before it's too close. And so when it comes to Koberger, I feel the same way. I want to know everything. And we don't know much. I mean, the
No, we
fact
don't.
that deal was struck means we don't get to learn much about the crime itself, the person, the aftermath. We don't get to learn that until we just start digging as journalists and find that out. And that helps us put tiny little pieces into the puzzle that we're trying to create to figure out who is this guy and how can I make sure I never come across someone like him.
And the other thing too that I think it's important to continue talking about him, whether you say his name, you don't, but you still share the stories, like the photos you had. Like so Courtney, gave me a couple after the show. It's like, I kind of asked her, like, is there, other than News Nation, can I have like a couple of them that I can post, before they hit like TMZ or whoever? And she said, yeah, she gave me two of them. And, you know, people got on me like, why are you sharing this? Why are you giving him space? I'm like, have you not listened to Steve Gonsalves? Because he said he wants everything out there. And here's the thing about those photos, and you had them on the show last night, so you know this. He might want attention, but those photos aren't the attention anybody wants. Those are mortifying.
They're mortifying. They're
Yeah,
humiliating for him, and fine. I don't
yeah,
mind
agreed.
humiliating Brian Koberger. I'm glad to cause any kind of discomfort for Brian Koberger. And I think those pictures he took on his phone, the dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of selfies that he took that he never shared with anyone, that he did not post, that he did not send, that he did not show, he just kept them for himself, shows a little bit more about the kind of person that mystifies us. We
I
are
fully
learning a
agree.
little bit more by looking at every one of those pictures of him. And again, does it help us to flag the next guy? I don't know. But every piece, know how investigators say every piece of information, no matter how small, is important to us. That's how I feel about this man. I want to know every piece of information because I think somewhere it's going to make a connection to something else that maybe can save my life.
And I fully agree with you for multiple reasons, but one of them too, like when you look at pictures, like you said, he didn't send those to somebody. Those weren't like dating pictures or to some significant other or a friend. Those were
Yeah.
ones that he took himself. So it's kind of gives you a little bit of a glimpse into the psyche of kind of what he was doing. And it might not be a huge glimpse, but that one face where, he kind of looks like, I mean, honestly, he looks like Fire Marshal Bill, what he looks
Or
like.
like the
Bro.
Joker almost, right?
Yeah, or the Joker.
Mhm.
And then the other one, it's just I don't know, it's creepy. They're both creepy. But it gives you a little bit more insight into the psyche and why was he doing this? What was his reason behind it? Because he's taking these photos for himself.
Well, listen, and on Drop Dead Serious, we got even deeper into the file. There were dozens and dozens I unloaded. So by all means, check that out.
I
There's so many
will.
pictures, and one in particular was him in a black hood looking very frightening. And it was the day before he was arrested. It was December 29th. He was arrested on the 30th. And we found out that he had watched a Ted Bundy special.
Yeah, I
And
remember.
the thumbnail on the Ted Bundy special was the big black hood. And so I wonder if he wasn't trying to mimic that Ted Bundy image.
That's a very interesting and astute
Something
observation.
else I will tell you about those pictures, there's one where he's shirtless, which is disturbing enough, and saluting in the mirror, saluting to himself. And he's saluting with his left hand, which has his ring finger. And as we all know, on the morning of the murders, he took that horrible, self serving, self righteous, self celebratory picture in his bathroom with the thumbs up, freshly showered and cleaned from whatever blood he'd been covered in. Thumbs up. And on his ring finger, you can see a bandage. And then the picture of him saluting is only a couple of weeks later into early December. It's either December 2nd or 9th. It's only a couple weeks later. Now the bandage is off that ring finger, and you can see a deep wound that is still scabbed over and healing. And I will venture a guess, and it's a guess only, that he received that wound while he was in combat with these kids. Xana, for one, gave up a hell of a battle in that bedroom of hers. And it is possible that as he was using his right hand, because he is right handed, he takes his selfies with his right hand. As he was using his right hand and trying to deflect with his left, he may have caught his ring finger.
That's yeah, I would be surprised if he didn't have some kind of injury. I didn't see that, so I'll have to go back and look, but that's a great
Zero in.
observation too.
Yeah, on
Yeah,
the saluting picture, he's saluting with his left hand, and you can see that ring finger knuckle. And if you zoom into it, you can see that that wound is still healing weeks later. And for a guy who's only 28 years old, you heal a lot quicker than that. If
yeah.
if the wound isn't real bad.
And I'll say real quick, because you brought it up, Ashley does have a podcast, Drop Dead Serious, and in the show notes, if you're watching this live, you won't see it. You can search for it on your favorite streaming platform. But if you're watching this later in the rerun, after we are able to get some show notes in, um, we're going to put a link to that podcast as well, so you guys can go check it out. And I would definitely encourage you to do so.
I
Just
just dropped it last night, I think at 3 o'clock in the morning, and then right after that, we dropped another one of all of his, searching, and he searched for serial killer data all in the days leading up to his arrest. He's in there in Pennsylvania, clicking away in his bedroom, looking for serial killer data. He's looking at, all these different YouTube videos, and I went through all of the tiles of the YouTube videos, and oh my God, is he fixated with Christian Bale covered in blood in American Psycho. There are
wow.
so many of those that he clicked on. Every other one that I saw was about the serial killers that fascinate him. BTK, Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy was one of them. He focused on a lot of very, very macabre, evil. His viewing habits were just very, very dark, shall I say.
Yeah, and we've heard obviously about the type of adult content he was looking at, and that's also very, very dark and sadistic.
He was taking pictures of himself shirtless in his own kitchen in Pennsylvania as well, which makes me think, what time was that? He was arrested at about, what, 4 o'clock in the morning, I think, or maybe 5, 6 in the morning, still dark. And when they arrested him, he was dressed all in black, which comports with the pictures that we've seen. We've seen him dressed all in black in some of
Yeah.
these photographs in Pennsylvania. And he was stuffing his garbage into little baggies. And there's one picture where he's shirtless in what looks to be his kitchen in Pennsylvania, his parents' kitchen. And there's a thing of baggies, like a small box of baggies on the floor beside him. And it just made me wonder if that might be the baggies he was using when they caught him.
Let me ask you this, and this is personal opinion, obviously, but we, like you said, we don't know a ton about this case. We know what's come out, we know what we've been told by the families, and a lot of that's come off on your show. So again, watch Banfield on News Nation at 10. But quick plug for you right there. But
Thanks.
I just kind of feel like he's a really bad criminal.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, without do you think they would have caught on to him eventually without the sheath?
Well, the white Elantra was pretty damn telling. I mean, that thing circled and circled and circled. They would have gone back in everyone's videos, their ring cam videos, and they would have seen the white Elantra doing lots of circling, not just that night, but also the many nights that he had done reconnaissance in the months prior. So, do I think they would have caught him, but for the sheath? Eventually, with the white Elantra and the phone behavior at that time of night, right? 4 o'clock in the morning there's not a lot of people out and about. Not hard to trace people like that, right?
Right.
And then to find any kind of trace early on would have been difficult, of those victims, maybe in his car or in his apartment. That would have been tough. They found no evidentiary value of the victims in his apartment or in his car. It was 2 months later when they finally found it. I don't know. What I'm surprised at is that he took his phone with him. That was
Yeah.
extraordinarily
Left it at
dumb,
home.
right? Shut it off. You don't take your phone and shut it off at 4 in the morning while you're driving. Um, Number 2, the fact that he didn't think he was going to encounter resistance and lose the sheath, that's pretty dumb. Number 3, that he did so much Googling of himself. Like, he was watching a lot of those tiles I was telling you about earlier on YouTube were a lot of coverage of himself. Um, it's possible he might have skated. It's possible, but he made some unbelievable rookie mistakes.
Especially given the fact that he was a criminology major and, forensic, it was kind of mind blowing on that.
Let me tell you something, Justin, I think he was gonna do it again. I
I
think he was
100%.
so pumped. Lindsay, my producer on my podcast, mentioned it to me, and I saw it after she said it, but the photographs from before the murder compared to the photographs after the murder, his selfies, something seemed to change. He seemed to have more confidence and anger and flexing, and he just seemed to be more aggro and buoyed. That's my opinion, that's Lindsay's opinion, by the murders, and so I really believe that he was gonna do it again. You don't do that as a one-off. He was
No.
also in his serial killer stats looking at the reasons, the top 10 reasons why serial killers in America and around the world do what they do, and the first one was thrill. for the thrill, for the love, for the boost of it, and that was number 1, and so he was consuming that information, right before he was arrested. So, without being arrested, I do think that he was gonna do more, and last night on my show on News Nation, we broke that 2 more people, we didn't break it, we actually reported something that had been broken in People magazine, my apologies, that he had been serially stalking 2 women, going to their homes, they believe, white elantracine, pulling out of their home while someone's on their porch, man standing at your window while you're at work, showing up at their work where they'd never posted their hours publicly. These women were being stalked by Brian Koberger, and so, yeah, I think that's the behavior of somebody who carried out what what he'd stalked, how he stalked his prey, he carried out what he wanted to do to them.
There are 2 things about him that have baffled me, and I don't know, I don't think we have answers to either one of them. Um, the first one is, there's nothing that shows that this wasn't his first time, but going for your first time, if you're gonna be, and I fully agree with you. I think that this is a serial killer in the making. But I go back and forth on being hard pressed on whether or not this really was his first time, whether it was animals or something else leading up to it, because it was to go in with a knife, which is typically very personal, very close range, and take out 4 people. Although I don't think he anticipated taking out 4.
Me too. I think
Uh,
he anticipated 1.
yeah, and he met with 4. Um, it's a heck of a start to a horrific serial killer career. The other thing that I have never, because we know, I don't want to get too graphic here with this, out of respect for the families, but we know how much blood is in human bodies, and I mean, we saw the pictures coming out of the house, um, and how he got out of that house, not covered in anything,
Yeah.
nothing seeping out of backpacks, nothing, just complete, even just only a partial footprint, that might have had a
I
little bit
I
on.
can't explain that.
I
I
don't know how he did
honestly
that.
I can't explain it, especially in Xana's room, the fight that went on, the
Yeah,
blood smearing all over the floors. It had to be all over his shoes. Did he then, right at that moment when he realized the battle was over, take those shoes off and walk out, um, in his socks? It's possible because remember, um, Dylan said she saw him holding something that looked like, something larger. Maybe it was his shoes.
like a
Maybe
bag
he
or
was holding onto his shoes with
container.
one hand and it was dark. The knife he might have put away, the knife he might have had in another hand. She might not have seen it, but she really saw him holding onto something. Maybe it was his shoes because as a criminology student, he would know I'm leaving footprints everywhere. Maybe he didn't realize after the murders upstairs, in which the bulk of the blood is in the bed, much of the blood is not on the floor down below, but some of it might have been, and he left that partial, maybe it dripped off maybe the partial print outside of Dylan's room dripped off of the knife, and he stepped in it. But I am for the life of me, I will never figure out how there is not a massive blood path leading from upstairs to downstairs to Xana's room and out the kitchen door. It
Agreed,
it
because you
is
think he'd be
astounding.
dripping. I mean, you think it'd be all over him unless he changed, like, maybe, like, I'm like you, I've been trying to figure it out, I've racked my brain, I think that I'm a pretty logical and intelligent person, and for the life of me, I can't figure out if there was anything I'd wanna know from him, it would be that.
Yeah, well, so much more. Why? Like,
I mean, yeah, well, why
and
too?
how many
I
others,
think why
and
is
what
he's a
else have you
psychopath.
done, all of it. There's so much I want. I mean, so much that I hope whoever gets that first interview does
If
the
he'll do it.
right job and asks, well, so we've heard that that's in the works, right?
Alright.
It's all rumor, but we've heard that a major broadcaster has paid the family, not him, he can't make money off that, that's impossible,
Yeah,
but the family could, and I feel for them. Boy, their lives have been
me too.
destroyed, as well. I really feel for them. I would like to see the families of the murder victims paid as well. But I will never castigate the family of Brian Koberger, their victims in this as well. That they had
I
nothing to
agree
do with
with you.
this. Their lives are destroyed by this. So they're not victims in the same sense as the survivors are and the family members of the dead are, but victims come in many different colors.
In their own way, they lost their child too, and I
And
know
they
it's,
lost their name and they lost their
yeah,
who they are. They're forever outcasts. I mean, The
yeah.
the Koberger family, the Dahmer family, just ask these parents what life was like after a family member of them just soiled their lives and lifestyles and names forever.
Yeah, but it can happen where the families of the perpetrator can turn things around and do good, and I'm thinking of Columbine right now when I say that. I can't remember
Yes.
if it was
So
Arizona.
hard though for the Klebold's and the Harrises, right? Like,
Yeah,
here's the problem. We all know that the internet's pretty mean, and, they have suffered immensely the anger and vitriol of the internet to the point where they've really had to go into hiding, and I think it's gonna be a long time before they can be public because they're probably just trying to get their lives back after being in hiding for 3 years. You come out publicly, you're inviting that all back in. I get it. I know why the Harrises and the Klebold's were so quiet in their efforts. They wrote a book, they've done a few things, but it's not been a massive campaign on Capitol Hill. It's been
yeah.
different. They're like
One mom
these
is a
are
speaker.
civilians, right? They didn't
Yeah.
invite this.
The one mom does a lot of speaking events, and she does I don't know if you're familiar with Rachel's Challenge. Actually, Daryl Scott's gonna be on this podcast. I'm recording with him next week, but, which is for people who don't know, that's Rachel Scott, who was the first victim of Columbine. Her father, who started Rachel's Challenge, which is there to help, prevent school shootings,
Mhm.
as its primary purpose, but, um they've worked I know that I cannot remember which one's mother is the one that speaks, but they've actually worked with her, in the past to kinda have these conversations, but that's, again, a very rare I mean, I've covered a lot of cases, you've covered more than I have, because you've been in this game a lot longer, and they're the only family of perpetrators I've ever seen that do
Well,
this.
and I'll tell you something. I mean, that's 30 years ago, right? So,
Yeah,
gosh, how long did it take before the families of Eric Harricks and Dylan Klebold were able to actually reach out to the
fair.
because so many people blamed them and said it's all parenting. And we know that parenting is a lot, but there's a lot more too. Really good parents can produce troubled children. It's really unfair to say it's all the parents' fault. And I'm sure that that's in the Columbine situation that went on for decades, where they just felt like they had to just hide from the horrors that were coming their way from people who blamed them for what their boys did.
You also can't look at and I mean, I remember Columbine, I was a junior in high school, and so I remember it very vividly because I was from an affluent area like they were, and, it's like this stuff couldn't happen. It was the first time, we ever paid attention to stuff like that. Um, and I lost my train of thought where I was going with this, but, um, what were we just talking about? Refresh me because I had
We're
a
just talking about the parents, like blaming the parents and
Oh, yeah,
holding them
blaming the
accountable.
parents. The '90s were very different.
They were.
You can't judge 1999 or 1998 99, by today's lens. You just
Yeah.
can't because mental health was looked at completely different. You didn't really have the internet, or what you did have on the internet was not anything like the internet today. And so you might really not have known what your kids were up to, especially if you were a double household that both parents worked and things like that. You really might not have known. So I give them a little bit more grace when it comes to that. When you look at somebody like, say, Ethan Crumbly's parents, I have less grace,
Way
but
less grace, but
way less grace.
they invited, a lot of this on themselves by their behavior before, during, and after his killings, and so that's a whole different story, and they were held accountable legally
Mhm.
for good reason. This was sort of breaking new ground to legally hold them accountable and actually, charge them criminally and then convict them criminally. Very, very different. Boy, I'm so glad you used the word grace because I think that should be the word going forward. How
Yeah.
much you said, "How do we get out of this? How do we change this? How do we" Grace. Everybody needs to just incorporate a dollop of grace into your worlds. Figure out a way to be more graceful and to use grace in how you communicate and react. I know your first reaction is, "How dare you say that? Who are you, asshole?" And the problem is there's no grace there, right? But there are plenty of, like, role models out there who you can imagine who are filled with grace, and all you need to do is do the "What would Jesus do?" moment, like, you just say, "What would so and so do?" And then behave that way, and that is a really good way to incorporate grace into your everyday practices and routines, especially when you're on your phone.
I agree, and people get very emboldened on their phone,
Hmm.
uh, in the comment sections, as you well know. Um, so like I said, with this situation, I think we had a couple really great conversations, and I so appreciate you doing this. Um, and I do wanna do it again where I can ask questions about you, I know neither of us expected this. This Charlie Kirk thing came out of
It came out
nowhere.
of nowhere. I know.
Um,
No, I'm happy to join you again anytime. You're one of my favorites. I have you on my show on Banfield all the time. I'd love to
and
have
I
you on
love
my podcast too, on
I would
Drop Dead
love that.
Serious. Yeah, and I think look, conversations like this are important. It's good for our communities to get together. And I'll say it again, it's a bit of a kumbaya, but we need a little dose of kumbaya along with all that grace.
I agree. Well, if I may, before we go, like I said, I want to ask stuff about you, but there's 2 questions I'm gonna ask you that were from my list that I had, and
Okay.
they can play off each other, and then we can close out. But, um, all right. So the first one is where did it go? Where did my questions go? There
Did it
we
disappear?
It disappeared on me. Okay,
No.
here they are.
Hate when that happens.
I'm gonna give you both of them. You can answer them in whichever order you want, okay? My questions are, what is one case that has stuck with you the most and why?
Mm.
And then this I feel like this will be a good segue to this question, maybe not. How do you because I know that I deal with a lot of emotionally heavy stories. I know you do too. Like the 11-year-old has really got me. Enunciation really got to me. How do you emotionally process the darker stories that you've had to cover?
I'll start with that last question. I emotionally processed it by crying when I saw the Charlie Kirk video immediately. I just started to cry. And it's not like I haven't seen gory videos before. It's not like I haven't seen war zones before. That's really gory and really tragic. But that one just got to me because it just embodied so much of what's wrong. This poor man dying before my very eyes, and for what? Come on, America, we're better than this. All of that came out in one fell swoop, just in seconds. And so, how do I process them? Probably the same way you do. Probably the same way everybody does. We try to separate that and keep charging on with life. We have jobs to do, we've got people to be, we've got parents to be, etc. But more and more, I'm finding that they're harder to process, and I cry at the drop of a hat a lot. And that's because of the answer to question one. What case has stuck with me the most? It's an easy one, and it's the biggest one. It's not going to be one that's obvious to everybody, and it won't seem like it makes sense. But I was a part of the biggest mass murder in American history, and the anniversary is tomorrow on 9/11, and so that sticks with me because a lot of people were murdered all around me, and I got away. And it's been really hard to process that for me. I've never shaken it. It made me a different person. It made me more short and brittle. It made me more emotional. So while all of those cases are really important to me, I will never not want to know more about Dahmer or about Gacy or about BTK or about BK or about any of them that have done these things. Um, 9/11 is that thing that just hangs over me and will never leave me. I know why they did it, but I also know it didn't work. Terrorism doesn't work. Shooting Charlie Kirk is not gonna work. Shooting Brian Thompson of UHC, of United Healthcare, is not gonna work. And anybody who's thinking about, taking their anger out on a political enemy or a philosophical enemy with a weapon, it's not gonna work. It just isn't. All you're gonna do is make some people sad, but you're not gonna affect change the way that you want to. So there are the 2 answers all in one.
I appreciate it. And I'll tell you, you ought to ask whenever you talk to him again, ask Jim Schmidt about his 9/11 story. It is
Really?
it is very weird. He was
Gabby
in
Petito's
Florida.
stepdad?
Yeah, Gabby Petito's stepdad.
Wow.
It was very he's told it to me a couple times. I find it fascinating. I'm not gonna steal his story, but he was in Florida, and because he worked, they're from New York. He was firefighter. So he was trying to get back to New York and all the planes were grounded. I'm not gonna tell you what happened on that train. That's a question to ask him, but it's a very interesting story, that's gonna make you really go, "Hmm, like, what was really going on here?" So,
Wow. You've left a good cliffhanger.
I'm gonna leave you on that, and we're gonna have Jim on at some point, so maybe I'll get him to tell it. And
Yeah.
the other thing, I agree with the crying thing. I have those moments. The ones that I really struggle to compartmentalize are the ones involving children. And I was and still am covering the Annunciation shooting and the children. And you have one little girl still in the hospital.
Mm,
I'm not gonna go there because I will get emotional.
yeah.
But I don't do well compartmentalizing those or covering those. And I've broken down so many times covering
Hey, I
those.
was I was up, at Sandy Hook for that day and, raced past my own children's elementary school to get there and couldn't stop. I'm in Connecticut, and, so that was really difficult the day that 26, people were shot, 20 of them little first graders. It was hard driving by my kid's school that was on lockdown and not being able to stop and having to get up there to
That'd
report.
be
So
so difficult.
Yep.
I can't imagine. It took everything I could not to go get Mike, and I live in, completely different state. Everything I could not go get my kid that day, but
Yep.
I was like, no, because she's in kindergarten. She doesn't know what's going on. Let's
That's
just
right.
keep it that way. Before we close out, I know we've talked about the podcast, the show. Is there anything else that you're working on that you want to tell the people about?
Just drop dead serious, and we've just been knocking it out of the park. I do this live show on News Nation every night at 10, but then I turn once the show's over at 11, I start working on the podcast. So a lot of times I'm not going to bed till after 4 or 5 in the
Never
morning,
stop.
and it's been a bit of a grind, but I'm really proud of what we're putting out there.
No, I know, and it's great, and you do phenomenal work. Well, Ashleigh, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you being the inaugural. This wasn't necessarily going to be the inaugural episode. I didn't know that yet, but it did, and I'm glad that you were the first guest on here. And
Good luck. I'm so like happy that you asked me, and I'm a big fan. You know that. And thank you so much for
likewise.
this opportunity to talk through this.
Absolutely, thank you. We'll have you back on again soon.